Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. Today is going to be different. We're going to have a very personal conversation with a very, very dear friend of mine, and it scares the daylights out of me. This is Joy Kogawa, who many of you will know, at least if you were in high school in Canada, you've probably read her book, Obasan, because I think most high school kids, at least at one period of time, were assigned Joy's book. And I read it not because I was in high school, but because I got acquainted with her. And we became very dear friends driving across Canada together. Well, Joy is the most honest person I think I have ever known. And she tells the truth. I mean, it's not honest in the sense of, stealing. I know other people who don't steal. I don't know anybody who tells the truth the way Joy does, because Joy, so it scares the daylights out of me sometimes because she says she's scared of me. I bully her. Or maybe that's not the word you use for it, but at any rate, she was scared of me. And I'm scared of this conversation because you never know what's going to come out. And indeed, today we've agreed to have a more personal conversation than usual, and not because it's not self-indulgent. Believe me, it's really related to the topic of, I want to say, guilt, but our topic really is forgiveness. And it's extremely important as a topic for people to think about because we encounter some version of the dilemma in all our lives. Every one of us, many times, has encountered the problem of when is it appropriate to forgive someone for transgressions, and when is it important and appropriate to hold out and require punishment or make them to make amends and feel remorseful and apologize and correct their behavior and convince us that they're going to do something better in the future. And these are two different responses that we have, in a way, often have a choice between. And it's not always an easy decision. Well, I don't think most of us spend a lot of time thinking about it in theoretical terms or abstract terms, but some people are, occasionally confronted with an extreme case in which the challenge of loving and forgiving are mixed in a very stark and important way. And I think that Joy's life has been largely about the issue of forgiveness because of her personal experiences that she has written about. There's one book in which she described much of it, a book called The Rain Ascends a number of years ago, and her more recent book, which is sort of a memoir, does talk about it further. But I'm going to let Joy talk about the nature of the problem to start us off. The reason I say I'm scared is because it's about very sensitive, hurtful, painful, difficult issues, and yet to respond to her properly, I may have to talk equally frankly, or refer to things that people may not want me to talk about. So this kind of conversation is dicey. Joy, tell us what you have to share now. And I have to admire your boldness, even when it terrifies me.
Forgiveness. All right, I'd love to talk about that. It, to me, is the word at this stage of my life, particularly. This is the road to the end as I experience it. I want to walk on forgiveness road. I feel it's the road of eternity. It's it feels like the road that opens up to the peaceful heart. What I experience is that the gift that comes to the person who forgives, who does the forgiving, is the greater gift than one gives to the other whom you have forgiven. Or therefore, forgiveness, especially if you forgive yourself, is a great gift to yourself. It's forgiveness, what I've discovered is it is attended by amazing gifts, gifts of abundance, gifts of peace, particularly, um, gifts of hope and faith and love, these tremendous gifts that the universe has in great abundance and offers to us. It's as if a door opens up and you see this wonder of what has offered us in the spiritual sense, from the source of wherever it is that forgiveness comes. And for me, the legends and the sources and the grid of thinking about forgiveness comes from my faith background, in which there was a man who, as he was dying, said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they do." He said this to his killers, or he said this to the source of love and forgiveness in the universe towards his killers. In other words, he did love those who were killing him. I think that's the most extraordinary thing that can be offered to us. I mean, I think of Nelson Mandela, who was a forgiver, who was a follower of the man who said that, and who believed that, and who is, to my mind, the greatest spiritual leader that we've had in our time, a man of great forgiveness, and has guided us, has led us in the way of peace by that example. So I love talking about this subject because at this stage in my life, I'm 80, I'll be 86 years old this year. I'm 85 now. And I think it's because of my trust and my hope and my faith in this road of forgiveness, I could, I think, say that these are the best years of my life. Although these years are of decline, mental decline, physical decline, emotional decline, there's a decline happening. And yet to be able to say with some confidence that these are the best years. I sometimes wonder when I say that, what do I mean? How can I say that? But it feels like that because of being able to go confidently into that dark night, into that nothingness that we fear or dread, or at least overcome with curiosity about. But to be able to go without that anxiety, but with confidence, is a great gift. And so anyway, I can go on and on about that, but here's my interviewer.
Okay. Obviously, the question of forgiveness comes up against the question of accountability. Socially, we have laws. People who break the laws are penalized, and they're held responsible for their action and made to feel remorse. In a court of law, a person who is not remorseful and does not apologize or seem to feel sympathy for the person he's harmed is going to be probably treated more vigorously, punished more harshly than a person who seems totally contrite. I can certainly think of cases in which people have forgiven others who have done very great harm. Obviously, I can think of, for example, one woman who went to the cell of the man who killed her husband. I think it was a South African case where the man in jail had tortured her husband to death or something of that kind. but she was so clear about seeing his repentance and his remorse that by the time she left, they hugged each other. Many people would say, and I'm one of them, I guess I'm not sure I'm one of them. In some cases, I think that kind of forgiveness I can really really admire, at least in that situation. But I think that in general, people expect everyone to hold others accountable for what they've done. And that means assigning culpability, who's to blame. And if you go to court, there are certain rules of evidence, and there's certain rules about who can be blamed for what. If a person has no mental capacity or emotional maturity, or if is under duress or is under the influence of drugs or alcohol or something of that kind, these conditions weaken the person's capacity to make good judgments, and therefore may mitigate the punishment that is meted out to the person. If you say this was a child who was too young to know what he was doing, or if this is a person who is who's mentally, whose brain is defective somehow, or this is a person who has himself been tortured to such an extent that his whole judgment and his whole personality is ruined. These are mitigating circumstances, and a judge or even people in ordinary life would say, we can't completely blame this person for this terrible thing he did. But it's, is this forgiveness? It's sort of forgiveness. Now, I was watching I think it's a video of a woman, theologian, who specializes in patristics, which I didn't even know what that word meant, but it means a scholar who studies the teachings of the early church leaders. So in the first days of the Christian church, she was asked whether or not the church leaders told their flock to forgive everybody all the time, everyone, constantly forgive. No matter what the person has done, forgive. And she said no, that the church leaders had definite procedures for what they would do. If somebody did something wrong in the congregation, they would take some senior members of the congregation and the person who's been wronged and go see the person and talk it out and say that the person must acknowledge having done wrong, must be remorseful before the offended person should forgive that person. So in other words, what you are saying, I think about Christ on the cross, forgiving the people who were killing him. I think they would explain it as that his expression is, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. If a person does something without knowing what was going on, without the full information about the consequences and the rationale for their actions, then you can forgive them. It's sort of like being mentally defective or something of that kind, of immature. They can't know enough to be held blameworthy. So Christ could say, these people don't know what they're doing, and so forgive them. But if a person should know what they're doing, and the court says any normal person would understand what they were doing, and there's no reason to think you shouldn't have understood too, then they're going to say, yes, you have to accept the culpability, the guilt. And if you don't feel guilty, we cannot forgive you. And you've got to go to prison or do something to get to the point where you are worthy, deserve forgiveness. So I think that is a social duty. And I think we recognize it, and if a person is too lenient, forgiving somebody who doesn't deserve to be forgiven, we blame the person himself for being too lenient. To be too forgiving is to excuse and allow for and permit wrongdoing. And I think this is actually very harmful. And I just wrote a paper about Donald Trump. Comparing Donald Trump with Barack Obama and their upbringing. And Barack Obama says his mother really formed his character by insisting that he empathize with other people. So she would say, if he's done something that she thought was wrong to somebody else, she would say to him, how do you think you would feel if somebody did that to you? And she would hold out and not relent until he acknowledged that that would be a very painful and unjust thing to do. So she would demand contrition of him out of empathy, requiring him to empathize with the person he'd harmed. Obviously, if you read Mary Trump's biography of her early life with her cousin Donald and their family, she makes it clear that the expectation was quite the contrary, that he should never empathize with the persons that he victimized, that he could be as bullyish and brutish and cruel and domineering as he liked, but he must never show weakness and never allow other people's point of view to have any weight against his own. He must always win in any conflict. To be weak was a terrible failing. And I think that, if we look as parents back to our parenting experiences, we can see times when a child, I think of children about the age of 5, if they do something that is really wrong and they should know better, and the parent relinquishes, abandons the effort to make them really understand how serious it was and show remorse, I think this sets a pattern in life that is very, bad. The child is being trained badly for a life that is selfish and cruel and, Trumpish. So I really understand your commitment to always being forgiving. And I agree with you. When you can forgive, it's certainly a relief. Because when you stop holding a grudge and stop rehearsing all the bad things that happened and recounting to yourself the wrongdoing that you've suffered, it's a great relief. It's a wonderful blessing. And one wants that. One wants to be the forgiver. And it's also nice to be the forgiven. But I don't think you can let go of accountability. I think we really have to have an obligation to justice, to hold out and say what was the right thing to have done in that situation. And if you didn't do the right thing, don't you think you ought to take a good look at that and acknowledge it? Maybe go to the person you harmed and make it right? So you and I profoundly disagree, I think. Even though I fully understand, and I don't think you've talked about your own personal situation of the real challenge of somebody that you love very, very much, and that you want to forgive, and that you forgive to an extent that other people blame you for not being strict enough. Do you want to talk about that or not?
I could. Well, there's so many things that you said, and I could have jumped in at any point. And what I wanted to talk about at one point was that accountability is not totally up to us. I think there are sort of unspoken laws. People know what's right. People have a sense of what's wrong, and we can't assume that we know that. And so at some point, we can give that over to the one who said, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," saith the Lord. So that if somebody has hurt me and I have to hang on to that in order to have the fuel to be able to demand accountability, that's a weight upon me that I would rather be freed of. But how can I have confidence if I don't hang on to my anger that there will be accountability? So then I feel obliged to hold it. However, if I am able to have confidence in that statement, "Vengeance is mine, I will repay," and it's not totally up to me to make sure that I am avenged. I don't have to worry about that. It's going to happen. And because I have that confidence that there is fairness apart from the part that I play in it, that it's not just up to me to make sure that the world is responsible and accountable and so on, I can live more lightly as a result of that. But if that's a kind of giving up of our job, then of course that doesn't seem right either. So I think there needs to be a balance between holding a grudge in order to be able to maintain the energy for making sure that there is enough accountability in the world and so on. There's that on one hand, and there's being able to live lightly in the world so that we don't ourselves get weighted down by all of that anger and that rage and that demand for accountability that can attend that good urge. So anyway, so I think it's a balancing act. And because I have a huge amount of faith in a universe that is filled with love, in which justice is an arc that is going to win. It may not now, but I have confidence in that there is an arc that bends towards the good. I have so much confidence in that I'm able to let go of a lot more things. And I wish I could let go of even more things. I know I'm weighted down these days by a woman who is making her job to publicize I was going to talk about my dad's badness. And she goes on and on about it. And it just, I mean, he's dead. He's been long dead, but it hurts me. And I think, why is she doing this?
I don't want to interrupt you, but you need to move sideways because we only see half of your face. Move.
Oh, okay. All right.
Thank you. Go on. Yeah.
Okay, your camera's over on this side. So anyway,
you're saying your father's been dead a long time, and this woman is still trying to make him pay for it, what he did wrong.
Well, she's trying to make me pay for it because she can't make him pay for it. He's been long dead. So he died in 1995. But I think her mission in life is to make sure that somebody pays for it. It better be me, because who else is there? I'm the only one that's going to be hurt by what she's doing. So she goes, so I've been thinking about writing, my response to her is not to attack her. She has her conscience and she has to do what she wants to do. And I'm not going to stop her from doing this thing that is hurting me. I am going to write about it, however. I'm going to write poetry. And that channels my hurt. It can transform my life, this act of art. And I trust the work of art to be transformative. So I put my energy into that. And then you can say, well, how does that help what she's doing? I say, what she's doing is not my responsibility. I'm hurt by it, but I can transform that hurt into something useful for other people. That is, if I write a poem and it reaches out to somebody, then that's more useful than my mounting a kind of attack on this person, getting all people to side with me and not with her and all that kind of thing. Who wants that? I mean, what way is, that sounds like a lot of political action that I don't have a lot of confidence that that's going to transform anything. It just gets, I'm up, you're down, we're up, I'm down, all that kind of thing. And so it doesn't feel like a forward-looking way to proceed with one's anger, to win. I don't have a lot of confidence in winning. Winning what? You know, what we want is more peace in ourselves, in the world. We want to emanate that peace so that it spreads. We want to be involved in whatever will transform our rage to peace and make us more effective in making a world that's more peaceful. It starts within, I think. Some people will say, no, there's two different arenas. There's the outside and there's the inside, and you don't have to worry about them. They're just separate. So put your energy into doing something good out there. Forget about what's inside. But I think peace is a continuum. I think the inner peace does extend to the outer. So I don't cut it off and say, here's the inside, there's the outside. They don't meet. I do think that they meet. But that's a statement of faith, I guess. How am I going to prove anything like that? I'm not out to win and prove it anyway. So
okay, let me see if I can explore what this woman may be thinking. Your father did some terrible things.
Yes. You want me to talk about that?
Well, I don't know whether you have to, but I think you may have to in order to make it clear to people why this is an issue. I would imagine this woman, and as I understand it, a large part of the Japanese Canadian community who knew him very well, he was a very prominent man, believe that he did not have to stand in, he didn't suffer the consequences. He was not really held accountable in any public way. And that that you are very forgiving of what he did and do not sufficiently talk about the horrors that he did. And that by being so forgiving, that you are not really upholding justice. That any just society would require that a person who did what he did be held accountable in a public way and made to suffer for it. And that you're too easy on him because you love him. Now, I think the important thing is sort of, you know, everybody, I think, would say you have every right to love your father. But then if you love your father, does that mean that you can say, you can excuse him, or you can say,
no?
All right. So that's where the issue is. I'm not speaking, I've never met the woman. I don't even know her name that you're talking about, but I think she is a representative of a certain strand of thought in the Japanese Canadian community, and that you're, she's not the only one who feels that way. And in a way, I can see it from her point of view, that if I don't really believe, Joy, I have to say this, I don't think that you can count on justice being imposed. If God says the vengeance belongs to him, he doesn't always show it, because the bad guys often win and never have to pay for what they've done in this life. That's why we have in Eastern philosophy the theory of karma. you can assure people, don't worry about it. You can feel confident that it's all going to work out with justice, because if the person did wrong in this life and got away with it and didn't have to pay any penalties, in the next life he'll come back as a bug, or something really ugly, and have to suffer more for it in future. So karma is something you carry with you, so that justice, when it's clearly not met in this life, you can have confidence that it will be eventually realized. So I don't think that it's right to say that you can count on having wrongdoers pay somehow in the long run, what, either in this life or some other one, because they get away with it. Maybe they get away with it more often than righteous people. I don't know. And in fact, even the use of the word righteous is already a misnomer, because I think the line between good and evil goes right down through the human soul, right? So everybody's got some of both. And the only answer to this is to recognize that we all can do terrible things. And some of us have done extremely bad things. I have things I'd just soon not talk about in my own history. And maybe I'm getting away with more than I should. Probably am. But so it's a good thing for everybody to remember that when we castigate wrongdoers, that, well, what is it? Who's going to throw the first stone? That kind of message. Are you really the worthy one? Are you so perfect that you can criticize the other one? Well, no, none of us is perfect to criticize. Yet criticism has to be done in this world. And if we don't uphold some standards of behavior and require it of each other, then things go downhill pretty badly. All right. Answer me.
Well, you said a lot of things. So I guess, well, we're thinking specifically about my dad and the harm he did and the rage that is against him and that is growing now. I had a dream in which my dad said, "Tasukete kudasai," which means please help me. And so I thought, all right, there's a kind of justice happening in that this woman is targeting me because my dad's dead and I'm having to carry it. And I think right now what I feel is, okay, I can carry the hatred against my dad because I love him. I can carry it out of love. And so there is a justice in having in this person's being able to get rid of her hatred by putting it onto me. Or I don't know if she's actually thinks in those terms, but it feels like that. And I can then say, I can't say I'm glad of that hatred, but I'm willing. I can carry it because of love. And I think love does that for us. Love will carry hurts for our sake. That's the story of Jesus. And I'm a follower of that way, and it makes sense to me. And so I'm glad that my life makes sense. And so in following that walk, I think that I'm that grid of meaning is really deeply satisfying to me. Because in one way I'm saying, oh, it's great. The buck stops here. It doesn't have to go on and on and on. I can carry this. And it's of value to somebody out there, to the person who is filled up with rage and hate because of what my dad did. And it's directed towards me. This happened to Japanese Canadians during the Second World War, when there was such a hatred against Japan that the whole country, was scattered us, took us away from our homes and scattered us across the whole country, made us pay for what Japan was doing. And we might think, that's really wrong. We should not, if we were innocent. Why should the innocent have to pay? Well, I think that is what the job of the innocent often is, to pay the cost of harm that somebody has done, out of whatever rage they felt. So the Hong Kong war vets, when they saw the Japanese Canadians were seeking redress, they opposed it. They didn't see that we were innocent Canadian citizens. They saw us as representatives of Japan. So did the whole country at the time. So it's understandable. That mechanism is understandable. The scapegoat mechanism is very useful. It makes the hatred go onto some innocent goat that is then punished for the rest of us. And so that principle, that mechanism, I think the scapegoat needs to know this, so that they're not just weighed down by this wrongfulness, but carry it like not gladly, because you can't carry suffering gladly, but you can carry it willingly because you can see that it's redemptive. So that is the way that I characterize the hatred that continues against my dad and is in some ways directed towards me. I can say, I'm glad I am innocent. If I were guilty, that would be horrible. That would mean I'd have to pay. That would mean I would deserve the hate. I don't deserve the hate that is coming my way because what my father did, but I can carry it because I love him. I can carry it willingly because I love him. I don't say that I do love the people who hate him, but I know that I'm supposed to. I know that that is the answer. So I pray for that. I ask for that. And I think that's the right thing to do. And it will come. I know it will come. I have confidence and faith that that necessary love, of which there is endless abundance, that will come and give us the answers that we need for peace in our hearts. I believe that.
Okay, move over again. You keep sliding.
All right.
Okay, I think you've given me a little bit of an insight into a philosophy of yours that I guess I should have recognized a long time ago. That is, I would say the answer to you is ask you, what do you think should be the penalty for people who molest children? Should there be a law? Should there be a standard treatment that everybody who is caught doing such a terrible thing should have to pay or not? So that's one question, and we can pursue that line of argument because I think you don't believe it. I think you. I think you don't believe it. I think you would just want to let go of culpability as a concept to such an extent that you would say nobody should have to pay for anything. But also your notion of what is the word that you used, that the scapegoating, that it is beneficial to society to scapegoat an innocent person. That is clearly the most definite notion of what injustice consists of. If an innocent person is scapegoated and punished for something he didn't do, that is the essence of injustice. And I believe that we have to devote our lives to sustaining justice in the world, even though many times, of course, we don't know what is just, because we don't know whether the mitigating circumstances are there, whether the person was capable of knowing right from wrong, whether or not, whatever happened. There may be excuses, there may be all kinds of reasons for feeling merciful. But in general, I think there is a requirement, a need. Society absolutely needs accountability. And to just say that, okay, mass murderers should be allowed to go free because we don't like to put people in jail, it's unpleasant. That's not right. We have a duty to uphold the law, to make sure the law is a just law and that it's, administered correctly and so on. But let's turn to this notion of this scapegoating. I remember one time, you've been preoccupied in some of our conversations in the past with Abraham and, is it Isaac? the one
With Jacob and Esau.
well, okay, we can talk about that one too, but I'm thinking of when the Lord requires him to sacrifice his son. He has to kill this baby child or a little boy that he loves as a sacrifice to God, because this is, and he knows that the child hasn't done anything wrong, but God requires that kind of sacrifice. And you thought that was okay. And I thought, if God really required that of somebody, that would be a God I could not worship, because that would be an evil God. So we really disagree on that one. God cannot be just and good while requiring us to make a victim of innocent people. That would be a horrible, monstrous God. So your notion that scapegoating is beneficial for society, that if we just pick out, we decide that this year it's going to be the Japanese Canadians who have lived in Canada all their lives and have no loyalty and whatever to the emperor, and we're going to put them in camps and penalize them because it's going to make us feel better. That is not beneficial to society.
I just want to leap in here. Right. I think when we, in the dawn of time, woke up to the absolute horror of what eating is, we had to choose whether we were going to survive or not. And we did. We ate. In order to be able to eat to survive, we killed. We had to do it, but that was the law. If you did not kill, whether it's a plant or an animal or whatever, if you did not kill something, you would not survive. So it was built in to this horrible world, this horrible dilemma, that what you love, you sacrifice for your own survival's sake. You put yourself ahead of what you love, whether it's your child, your animals, your plants, you kill. Without killing, there is no life. And so what do you do when you wake up to realize that that is what is required of you, this most horrendous, horrible thing? To survive, you eat, to eat, you kill. How do you make sense out of a universe, out of a world in which that is required of you? And I think those are the beginning thoughts of what constitute our religion. And that's the story of Abraham and Isaac. And the grace of the story of Abraham and Isaac is that as he was obedient to the law that you kill, he was provided with an alternate. So he still killed, but he didn't kill what he loved most, which was his son. He killed what was offered instead. And that's the story of Jesus too, that we don't have to destroy the whole planet, although we seem to be doing that anyway. We can put it on our scapegoat. We have this necessary mechanism for our survival, which is that what we love the most, we really don't have to kill, although we had at one point, we thought we had to. But we do still have to kill. We just don't have to kill what we love the most.
Okay. That's a very, very meaningful, I can relate to what you're saying, that it is terrible that we have to kill. Yeah. And we do have to. Yeah. Okay, got it. Now, can you transfer that over? Is it really analogous to the business of holding other people accountable for their actions? I don't think we should kill your father. I don't think we should kill anybody who's a wrongdoer, because if only because then they can't repent. After they're dead, they can't.
But, I was just thinking that I killed him. I told the truth about him. I made him write the letter to the church. I made the truth be known. I am blamed for this by some members of my family. If I had never written about it, nobody would know anything. Why did I do that? Why did I bring shame on the whole family just because I had to tell the truth? I don't know. It's because I somehow have believed, because my mother was an extremely truthful person, because I always believed that truth was just as important as love and they had to be hand in hand. But I don't believe quite that anymore. I believe that love has to be stronger than truth. Love has to be above truth if there's a hierarchy of values. And so I think that love must stay with truth, but love must be above it. That's what I think. But
You and
anyway,
I
I think I've
have,
wandered away.
we've talked more about love than we've talked over these many years about forgiveness and justice. We both talk about love, and we think we're on the same wavelength, but I'm not sure we really are, because I see love and truth as not compatible, or well, let's justice. Let's put it this way. I see love as something that does not have any empirical reference, whatever. I think we absolutely all totally love each other, and there's never any question of love. It's a question of whether we can see it. We all love each other. We all loved Hitler, and it was not incompatible with also hating Hitler. These two things do not cancel each other out. You can love people you don't respect, people that you don't like. It's hard. It's what's really problematic. It's not loving, because love is really there all the time if you just can see it. But we believe that love and liking or respect or admiration or these social values about our esteem for a person's behavior, we believe that those are indicators of love. And because they're not, then there's no hierarchy at all. These are two different things. Love is there. Don't worry about it. You loved your father. Of course you love your father. No matter what he did. And everybody loves, Mrs. Trump loves her son, or loved her son, even when she said he's a real jerk. Yeah, she knew it was a jerk. So it's not incompatible to love him and say, oh, she knew he was a jerk. Okay. So I think that that's what has to be separated out. That don't worry about whether or not you love someone. You absolutely do. And you couldn't even be here if you didn't love each other. But it's really hard to see sometimes, because we think that what we're looking for is whether we like the person, admire the person, respect the person, and so on. I would say I can think of the one person in my life that I most certainly totally 100% love. And this is someone I don't really admire very much. I'm very disappointed in. And okay, that's the way it is. Now, when you're disappointed in somebody, that's when you have to actually do the socially relevant action of imposing requirements on each other, because we live in space and time. We have shortages of our energies, our resources, our commitments. If I do something for one person, I can't spend the same resources doing something different. So to live a good life, I have to budget my time and energy and resources. And I do that to maximize the amount of respect and cooperation and good behavior that I can elicit from other people in interacting with them in this life. That means saying thank you when somebody's good. It means paying them on time. It means making sure you've given them, as much attention as you can. And it also then means depriving wrongdoers of your attention, saying, I'm sorry, but you're not worth it to me. Your behavior is not something that I can condone. Go think about it. Go sit in the corner a while and come back when you're ready to say you're sorry. That's, as a sociologist, I say that is necessary. Sanctions are essential, and we have a commitment and an obligation to impose them.
See, I think I just feel we're a little bit different in our expectations of ourselves as judges. Because I think I cannot know what another person's reality is and why they act the way they do or anything. I can look on something quite superficially and say, well, I wouldn't do that. But I have no idea really. There's so much I don't know, and I certainly don't know another person. I don't even know myself. So I don't like to give myself the capacity to make the judgment and say, all right, this person I judge to be like this, even if maybe I do that. I don't like doing that because I cannot know what their reality is, let alone my own. So anyway,
Okay,
I
I
just
get
wanted to
it that you
interject that.
cannot know, but I agree with the people who blame you for that. You are being socially irresponsible, Joy Kogawa. If you say, I don't know, he's a mass murderer or he molested 300 children, I don't know. How should I know whether that's right or wrong? I mean, how can I
I
look?
don't. That's
I mean, I'm sorry, but you have an obligation to say that is wrong, and you have to pay for it, and you have to acknowledge it, and we have to deal with this as a reality. You can't just say, "Oh, okay, I forgive you." Uh-huh.
I think that there is some kind of standard of decency that people agree to, and there are people who do not adhere to those standards of decency, and so we do have laws, and we must have laws. I agree with all of that. It's just at a deeper level. I don't think. I mean, though we do have to have the mechanisms of protecting people. If somebody comes running at you with a knife, you make sure you get out of the way, you make sure you are shielded and so on, all those things. I mean, we have these common sense ways of dealing with aggressions that are in the world. So what am I saying? Have I just contradicted myself?
You just undercut your own argument.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right.
Go sit in the corner and think about it a while. Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I'm glad you acknowledge that society requires and absolutely couldn't survive if we didn't have rules and if we didn't try to uphold those rules. And we have an obligation to uphold those rules. And that does not say that we love the person any less for it. And as a matter of fact, even you're talking about predation, we have to go, hunters go kill deer, wild animals, and we eat them. I'm sure, I remember at church, you and I belong to the same church. Neither one of us are very faithful attenders lately, but I can't remember her name, but the member of our congregation gave the homily one day because they had left Toronto and moved to someplace in the Maritimes and become sheep farmers, I believe, ranchers. And she was talking about how she would stay up all night nursing taking care of a sick baby lamb, let's say, and loving that lamb. And she would love the lamb all the way to the time where she slaughtered it. So her slaughtering the lamb did not mean that she didn't love the lamb. It certainly wasn't an act of hatred. It wasn't an act of rejection. It wasn't an act of anything except what you've pointed to, that we depend on food from killing. And you can love the animal that you're killing. We certainly do it when we have mercy killing. We often are aware of killing people that we love because they're suffering so much that we want to put them out of their misery. But the same thing applies, I think, to the eating situation that we destroy in order to live. That's part of that is indeed, people actually, I'm going really off on a tangent now, but saying that many people who believe in evolution say that this is an argument against God. In other words, they don't believe in religion, they don't believe in God, because really beings, all species came into existence through a process of eliminating the unfit. They're in competition, and the ones that are not as strong get eaten by the ones that are bigger or outrun, you know. So, so they say that this process of survival of the fittest is a cruel one, and yet that is the mechanism by which life forms as we know them now came into existence, and therefore this is a pretty good evidence for their minds that that God doesn't exist, because you know you don't need a God in that kind of theory. You're dependent on this mechanism of the survival of the fittest. Well, I think it's pretty good evidence that we have a very intelligent being in the universe that thought up such a system. Who would have invented such a thing as the survival of the fittest as a mechanism for progress and development, except a very, very intelligent being? So I think it's an evidence, you know, it's an argument for the existence of God, but a God that doesn't work necessarily the way Joe Kogawa thinks he ought to work.
The hand of God that comes and rescues us when we need it. Not that kind.
Yeah.
Not a Santa Claus. God is not Santa Claus.
Or maybe God is a Santa Claus too. I'm not sure that believing in the survival of the fittest precludes believing that if you are sick and you pray to get well, that there can be some other process involved that might save you. I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying that these are completely incompatible things, but I think that the discovery of the process or the creation of the process of evolution was an amazing act of intelligence.
Yeah. Well, I think I have a sense that our time's up and I need to put my AirPods on.
Your hearing aids take precedence over.
What? No, I can't hear you.
Okay.
I can't hear.
Okay, that's fine. I'll say goodbye anyway.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.